Transportation Planning Organization. We'll open the meeting. And first thing to do is certified quorum. Mr. Firestone.
Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges.
Here.
Ms. Barnhart. Charles City County, Mr. Atkins.
Here.
Mr. Coda. Chesterfield County, Mr. Holland.
Here. Good morning.
Morning. Vice Chair Winslow.
Fine there.
Goochland County, Mr. Lumpkins.
Here.
Ms. Lascalette. Hanover County, Chair Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Present.
Henrico County, Ms. O'Bannon. Mr. Thornton. Newcastle County, Ms. Page. Mr. Tiller. Powhatan County, Mr. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Carmack. City of Richmond, Dr. Newbill.
Here.
And Mr. Addison. That concludes the roll call for attendance. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. And next item on our agenda is consideration of amendments to the agenda. Does anybody have any amendments that they would like to add to our agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Approval of May 18th meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at those minutes? Any corrections, additions, changes? I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion to approve. And second.
Motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, minutes are approved.
Abstain.
One abstention. Mr. Davis. Okay, Mr. Parsons, in your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If it's okay, I'd just like to move into item 5. I think there's a number of things that we wanted to cover that are on the 9:30 agenda. This is a new fiscal year, so there are some changes, as is expected every year, to the makeup of the organization and the way we're going to move forward into FY24. Some of the things that that were started in FY23 are expected to remain. Chair Lumpkins started a locality highlight in each at each meeting where a member locality would be given time to share news and updates regarding what's going on locally, and Mr. Peterson's asked to keep that on the agenda. So today we're going to highlight the town of Ashland again and start there. Mr. Hodges and I believe Ms. Amos are going to be leading that. So we're excited about continuing that new tradition, I guess. And then the item 6 under old business, under administration, I guess, is the we need to address the election of the FY24 chair and vice chair again. And I think related to that is a revision to the FY24 meeting schedule. But Mr. Peterson, did you want to talk about that?
I do. The fact of the matter is, as I was elected chair, but I'm no longer going to be an elected official come January. Therefore, I did not want to leave this organization in a bind, having to resign halfway through the year. So it has been worked out with Chesterfield. That Chesterfield and Hanover will switch places in the rotation. And believe Mr. Winslow is going to be considered for moving into this chair in our meeting this morning. And I can move back in the corner there. But that will allow for continuity through the whole year as we go forward in this organization. And then basically Hanover will take over. We'll move in next year. After that, everything will be back to normal rotation. But because of the fact that can only be here for half a year, it is appropriate, I think, that we change the schedule and have a chairman who will be here for the full year. So, with that,
So I guess just a recap, according to the non-binding governance documents for the TPO, the rotation is that normally Hanover would be chair this year, FY24, Chesterfield would be vice chair, and then the city of Richmond will be following that. The proposed change is that it would just flip so that Chesterfield was chair, Hanover would be vice chair, and the city of Richmond would remain in that the next slot up. So it's not going to be a major shock to the rotation, and we expect that it can move forward fairly seamlessly.
It should allow some smooth continuity.
And kind of related to that, to the election, is that there's been a proposed change to the meeting schedule for FY24 in appreciation of all the work that everyone in this room is doing this fall to strike the October meeting. And just we'll do August, November, and that should help ease some of the pressures on everyone to be here every month through this busy fall season. The consent agenda is fairly straightforward. The work status and financial reports are in the packet, and then item 8B is a VDOT requested TIP amendment, and this is a consent action approval of requesting the amendment of Richmond Henrico Turnpike and South Segment project. And then under new business, we have a number of presentations, being the end of FY23, beginning of FY24. There's a number of projects that are before you for approval and action. The first is our socioeconomic data packet. Mr. Ariel will be presenting that, and this is, as you know, anybody who's been around for a while, this is a precursor to the long-range transportation plan. So we are now in that cycle where our socioeconomic data for the region is kind of the first kickoff data set that we prepare in advance of developing the next long-range transportation plan. That's still a few years out, but it's time to start thinking in that way. The next item under B2 is the West Broad Street BRT corridor analysis. This was actually an exciting project that our staff was able to assist GRTC in developing, and it was looking at a possible expansion of the Pulse corridor from its current terminus all the way out to essentially to Sheltering Arms 288 in Goochland. And this was an outreach project that we did. There was some economic analysis involved with Mr. Adhikari on our staff, and we had great business participation along the corridor, community stakeholders. We actually went out and did surveys on the bus routes, on the Pulse route to get riders' opinions. And I don't know the full number, but Mr. Mata, who's going to present this, will have details, but it was well over 1,000 survey responses, and we got some great feedback on the expansion of the Pulse corridor, and it was overwhelmingly supported. So we're bringing that corridor analysis plan to you for action to adopt it, and then we're looking forward to continuing that with GRTC in the future.
I'm sorry, was there any supporting material? I didn't see anything.
I believe what we have, Mr. Mata's not here yet, but I believe what we have is a story map, like an ArcGIS online document that's been prepared. I don't think there was there was a paper plan done. We're kind of transitioning that way. I apologize.
Well, yes, I'm a paper person.
Yes, and we'll certainly, we'll be able to address that following the meeting and be able to share that out with everyone so you can distribute it and take some time to review. We do have under B3 a amendment to the recently adopted Unified Planning Work Program. I don't like to bring these to you very often, but there are two amendments to that UPWP, which are on page 122, and I'll just take a second to go through those with you. There's a staff report, and two things that we need to take action on to provide some clarity. We're not changing any of the funding commitments in the work program. We're adding more detail. The first is to provide support for a $100,000 pass-through of carryover transit funding, 5303 funding from last year, directly to GRTC to help them in completing the essential infrastructure plan. This is a project that is doing an analysis of bus stops and features that are surrounding bus stops, I think mostly on the south side. And this is something that has received a lot of attention, both locally and in the media over the last 6 months or so. So this pass-through funding, we just need to provide some more detail so that Department of Rail and Public Transit could support the pass-through funding. So there's, I believe there's extra text in the work program that talks about the essential infrastructure plan. Not to dive into this too much, but staff is excited about this project too, because we're going to do, as this rolls out on the GRTC side, we're going to do a study within the TPO to look at a before and after analysis of how the targeted stops are operating now, and then after the improvements are made, will that improvement have any impact on ridership? To kind of provide a cost argument for making improvements to bus stops and the impacts that those have on the ability of the system to take on more riders. The other amendment to the work program is an allowance. We've been working with VDOT on this to understand the abilities we have, but this is an allowance to make administrative modifications to the work program at the staff level. So they don't have some modifications to the work program won't have to come to the full board for approval. Say if we're shifting funding at the end of the year, which we sometimes have to do to cover work tasks that receive more attention than others. If we're not asking for additional funding to be added to the work program, some of those types of things can be administrative, and we think that that's going to streamline the approval process and allow us to continue to move forward quickly and efficiently and making sure that the work program covers the costs that we have. Any questions on that?
Mr. Chairman, have you never had any authority under administrative modification prior to this adoption?
We have not, because we didn't really know that we could. So in working with VDOT and understanding what the opportunities were to make the work program operate more efficiently, we're now requesting to add that language in.
I think probably we should go over what, I'm reading it now, but I can't really tell how broad that scope is. Yep. Because you started this presentation saying you don't bring that many amendments to the work program to start with. Correct. So has it been an obstacle getting a policy board to approve amendments?
It's not an obstacle, but I wouldn't say that the policy board is ever opposed to doing those types of amendments, but it's adding additional tasks to the agendas. It goes through the TAC before it comes to the policy board, so it's the process of preparing the amendments, putting them together, routing it through TAC, and getting their discussion and approval and recommendations, and then bring it to the policy board. And usually those happen in March, April timeframe every year. So it's just allowing us to be a little bit more nimble.
Yeah, I think when we get to it in the main meeting, it probably just a better sense of the scope of the kind of things you're looking to have under this bucket would be helpful.
Sure thing.
I'd like a little bit more discussion right now on this to some degree as to whether this includes funding, or whether it includes just action type of, and if so, any limitations on it.
Okay.
I think the executive committee.
Mr. Chairman, I agree.
Absolutely. So there's two bullet items on page 122 that kind of outline what those administrative modifications might entail. One, it's allowing transfer of planning PL funding, which is the VDOT funding side, FHWA funding, between subtasks of a broader task without needing full policy board approval. And that would, let's say, a good example might be So we have a work task called 7300, long-range transportation planning. This modification would allow an administrative change so that we could transfer funding in any of the 6 subtasks that are there, say between active transportation, 7340, and long-range transportation plan, 7310. So the administrative function would allow any funding that's under long-range transportation planning to be moved between categories so that we could cover costs. And that's usually, like I said, at the end of the fiscal year when we know that we might be short on one task over another. And that happens on occasion.
Are there any limitations on the amount of funding that can be moved without approval of the policy board?
There are not any limitations, but the precedent is that we only transfer funds to cover expected shortfalls.
Okay, this is something I think the policy board is gonna have to consider if they're, as to how free we want to. I think this is, probably has some value, but it may want to set some fences.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mr. Williams.
Chairman, are we talking about being able to move money underneath a particular category, whatever the category of federal funding is, 5303, I mean, as an example. Are you talking about the subtask underneath a source of federal funding where you want to adjust, not going across the different stovepipes of the characterization of federal funds? You're not going across those, but you're going underneath of them, adjusting the subtask?
That's correct. We're only talking about PL funding,
Okay.
actually. And what that would do would be to allow,
Those are the planning funds.
yes. So for example, say we get to April and we have a contingency line item.
All right, very quickly, could we all turn to page 139 in our packages? Let me see if, I'm gonna ask 7100. You could move funds from 7110 to 7120, but you could not move from 7100 to 7200. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's the subclass.
Okay, so it's just only within that limited category. And those funds that are already there, it's just shifting them within, is that correct?
That's correct. And if we wanted to move it from a larger a header category to another, it would still have to come back.
Have to come
Yeah,
back here.
that
Okay,
answers
that
my
makes sense,
question.
all right,
Okay.
okay,
Thank you.
thanks. I think going to that page might help me see it. Ms. Hodges.
When I read the proposed policy saying MPO staff may make administrative modifications without a public review period or TPO policy board approval, that seemed to be a pretty sweeping statement. And the basis says the definition on the next page says an administrative modification is a revision that does not require a public hearing. And comment. Redemonstration of fiscal, it was stated instead of sort of sweeping implications, it seems to be more constrained. And I wonder if the policy could reference the definition source, and that might, it does?
If you look at I think the answer to your question is on the back of, well, on page 123.
Yeah.
So it references section 450.104.
And that would be a part of the policy?
It would by reference. So that's a reference to a federal regulation, and the regulation, I can read it to you if you like, but it basically defines what a minor revision is, includes minor changes to project / project phase costs, minor changes to funding sources of previously included projects, and minor changes to project phase and initiation dates. An administrative modification is a revision that does not require public review and comment, a redemonstration of fiscal constraint or conformity determination in non-attainment and maintenance areas. And that's included in that paragraph there about the definition resource.
And that helps me a lot, and if that's referenced, I'm satisfied.
If we could, just make sure we're clear of that when we bring this to the whole policy board.
Sure.
Okay. Proceed.
Okay, thank you. Related to, assuming that the UPWP can be amended today, item B4 is the approval of, or the motion to approve an agreement with GRTC for utilizing pass-through FTA and Commonwealth Transportation Funds, transit funds in the RRTPO area for fiscal year '24. So it basically memorializes an agreement that that reflects the ability of the TPO to pass through those that $100,000 in funding for the essential infrastructure plan. And this we have gone through, I'm not sure if Ms. Adams will be here today, but we have gone through and GRTC is on the same page as us regarding the agreement. Then we have two TIP amendments, item B5 and B6, for Main Street Station improvements, and a request for a TIP amendment adding the north-south bus rapid transit line project. And Mr. Bushing will present both of these, and there's a little bit of it's not actually the bus rapid transit line. The naming of the amendment is a little bit of a misnomer to what the actual work is. So we'll be able to provide some clarity on that and move things forward. Because right now, as everybody knows, the north-south bus rapid transit study is underway. So there isn't a proposed route or anything yet for that line. So we don't want to put the cart before the horse. Mr. Chair, that's it. After that will be agency committee reports, future meeting topics, and member comments.
Thank you, sir. And so, all right, now let's go back to the CTEC member participation. Follow up. Item number 6 on our current agenda.
Yes. So we have, I think we're at a point where there can be some decisions made. I think everybody is kind of on the same page in terms of what CTAC is willing to do and is interested in doing. They were in attendance at the last meeting, and Ms. Guthrie, although she is now retired, was very affirming of the relationship that CTAC has had with the TPO, and I think they're realistic in terms of trying to find ways that they could be more of an asset to the policy board, knowing that there are some limitations regarding meeting schedules and ability of the committee to be timely in their recommendations. But I think we're now at a point with a new chair and trying to understand what the options are to see if there's anything in particular following the discussion that was had last month, whether the policy board is ready to move forward with anything or if there needs to be more discussion.
Discussion. Mr. Hodges.
I was just gonna add, one of the requests was from CTAC was to have maybe representation, have members of the policy board attend periodically. Mr. Martin, Upton Martin, who lives in Ashland, and I are going, I'm planning to go in September. I've indicated that. Not just for the lunch that they offer, but also just to talk about what's on our agenda and try to answer any questions or bring back any questions that they have. So, and I just volunteered on to do that. I think it makes sense periodically to have a contact.
Good point. I see a lot of head nods. So that means We need volunteers.
And they meet, I think, bi-monthly, and I don't know if we make every meeting. but-
Are we making a point of keeping them informed, Chet, with our agendas so that they are familiar with what we're looking at, so that they can give us feedback?
I think at this point, there is an assumption that they are informed because of the website and Mr. Lance's involvement on a regular basis with the CTAC. But we can formalize that a little bit more, I think, would be a good idea. And I think that your point about volunteering, staff could work with the board to put together a list of the CTAC meetings and try and nail down some representation if people are willing to sit for the free lunch and talk about what the CTAC is involved with and how they can be better.
Well, it depends on where they're meeting.
That's
But no, I think that would be helpful, but I know we put our agendas and everything online, but sometimes they don't get online till just before we have our meetings. But at the same time, just a reminder to the CTAC that of these things, a lot of times if I don't get a reminder, something doesn't get done. And it's probably true with them as well. Yeah.
All right, we do have, Mr. Chair, just a couple other things. We do have a list that is, I think it's still in development of ways that CTAC can be more involved. So advising on potential smart scale applications as we get into that time of year would be one way. It isn't a specific meeting, but over a period of months, they could be involved in the process for.
Where are we with that?
Smart scale?
No, with these,
Well, I think-
developing this.
I think staff is still working on refining it, but I think we'll be ready probably in the next week.
Okay.
To be able to share that.
Should this be an item on next month's agenda? There.
Absolutely.
I think I got the headline I was looking for.
Mr. Chairman, that's a good point. I might
Okay,
add
Mr.
also that Mr. Lumpkin and I attended the CTAC meeting, and there was significant discussions about interaction, communications with respect to their involvement in ours and with respective jurisdictions, especially, for example, Richmond. I know who was the incoming chair from the city of Richmond for CTAC, if I remember correctly. I made the comment that, interaction with the respective council person is really a great idea, as well as other jurisdictions as well. And so I think facilitating conversation and interaction is certainly an ideal situation for them as they attempt to move forward in that respect. So, Mr. Lumpkin, I don't know if that was your interpretation as well of our meeting with them a month or two ago.
I agree, and my thought too from that meeting was there seems to be a continued willingness on their part to engage.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I don't think we should let that pass by.
This is an opportunity, I think, moving forward. So with respect to the agenda, I think it's well in order, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll put that on next month's agenda for discussion.
Mr. Chair, I concur. I think more
Let's do it.
formal opportunities for communication between us and that entity is invaluable. I mean, for the express purpose that it was established. And so figuring out a rotation, so it isn't just, who's in, but really a rotational hat, so that it becomes more formalized, I think will be critical.
That's well worth consideration, I believe.
Yeah.
And I saw you light up when you thought that they had appointed you chairman or something.
I might, yeah, right.
We did have the new chair here at our last meeting, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, it's from the city.
It's the city of Richmond chairperson. That's what I was alluding
What
to,
was
not
her
you, Madam.
name?
No, I knew.
Sarah.
Okay, thank you,
I
Madam.
knew that was not the case, yes.
Just confirmed.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Chet?
No, sir.
Anything else from the executive committee? Not, the next meeting will be September 7th, right here at 8:30 a.m.